Come, let us explore what could be done about compassion's pain. This evening's lesson is drawn from a good-hearted question found on Reddit. The question begins: how to deal with existing in a reality where a being's survival is based on the suffering or sacrifice of another. The question continues: how to let go of the existential pain and emotional distress, since it's something one cannot control or change. So let us begin with broad brushstrokes. This could be a sincere question, or it could be a bad faith question. This could be a person who is genuinely empathetic and wants to make the world a better place, but knows his or her limitations. Or it's someone with something kind of like a cluster B personality disorder who doesn't like the flavor of empathy and is trying to back away from it like a kitty cat whose head is stuck in an empty bag of Doritos. I'm going to assume the former, that this is a good-hearted person with a heart as big as the day is long and who simply recognizes his or her limitations and desires real assistance, not just platitudes, but specifics. And if that's the case, and if you're watching this right now, this is the video for you. Of course, if you're watching and you're not that person, you're welcome to watch anyway. If you have questions, by all means, type them either in the chat window or in the comment area below the video, depending upon whether you're watching this, live or as a replay. Coming face to face with the suffering of one other, several others, many others, no less multitudes, can be overwhelming. That is not the question. The question is which mechanisms within our within our central nervous system are we going to employ to deal with the sufferings of the multitudes? In order to answer that, I must throw in a bit of background. Sturgeon's law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks, but not in the fun, tingly way. That applies to 90% of humans, even meditation teachers. I kid you not, that's the majority of meditation teachers. Sincerely feel and teach that being rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel is really where it's at. And they look down their nose at the minority who strive to be flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. So those who are rigid and fearful and controlling have very specific styles of meditating that they practice and that they teach. These people will implore others to actively concentrate or focus and actively analyze. Now, neurologically, the only way to do that is to make use of very discrete mechanisms such as those found in our medial prefrontal cortex or our dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Now, the prefrontal cortex is a wonderful bit, kind of like a Swiss Army knife of tools. And if you want to compare, contrast, calculate, compute, reason, or edit, or analyze, then this is a wonderful resource. but we must treat it with respect. If we overuse it, it will activate our amygdala, this almond-shaped organelle in the bottom of our limbic system. Functions as the seat of aggression and anxiety, feeding our rigidity, feeding our anxiety, feeding our controlling tendencies. If we and so generating a downward spiral. Now, if we are clever and we notice these warning signs, we will back off and give our body and mind the rest it needs. Maybe our body needs exercise, fresh air, sunshine. Maybe our body needs water or a snack. Maybe our body needs to lie down and watch cat videos. It's wise to tend to our body's needs. But if you are half as dumb as me and have been corrupted by bro science, encouraging you to just gut it out, then if you persist, like me in the past, if you make the mistake I did, and just abuse the prefrontal cortex, you get so exhausted that you begin to present with symptoms of depression. So when and this is very much about the yang neurological mechanisms, abusing our prefrontal cortex, stimulating our amygdala, really can get us stuck in yang. And in yang, we don't have the wherewithal to deal with the sufferings of others. And if it's not something that we can tend to right now, we are at a loss. That's not your fault. That's how those bits and pieces are wired. Fortunately, in the vast array of our central nervous system, those are not the only two bits. There are other bits that you probably know about, perhaps forgotten about, and I would like to reintroduce to you, if that's okay. The Buddha taught an eightfold path. The dynamo of that eightfold path. So the Buddha taught an eightfold path, the dynamo of which is the seventh and eighth folds of that path, mindfulness and meditation. How powerful are they? They're so powerful that when we practice them correctly and consistently, the remaining 6 folds of the eightfold path take care of themselves automatically. That is how powerful they are. The first of these 2 is mindfulness. Every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we are wired to access our sympathetic nervous system. Where is it located? In the middle third of our spinal cord. This bad boy has evolved to help us perceive vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. It has evolved so this whole flavor of perception is yin. It's very, very flexible. It's very, very laid back. It's messy, isn't it? Kind of like a child at play, is it not? Or perhaps a kitty cat with the zoomies. And so there we are, wired to perceive. To perceive sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and so much more. Including mind's antics of emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining. That could feel overwhelming. Fortunately, there's meditation. You see, every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, whether we mean to or not, whether we know it or not, we automatically access our parasympathetic nervous system. Anyway, this bad boy is located in the bottom third as well as the upper third of that same spinal cord. This parasympathetic nervous system, this needs to be adjusted, I think. Every time we exhale, this parasympathetic nervous system is wired to support both physical relaxation as well as mental release. Now, how's about 2 spoonfuls of good news? Practice mindfulness and meditation that rely upon our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. At least 5 minutes every 12 hours or so. Not only will you calm your amygdala down, but you will fire up this thing right here. This thing that kind of looks like a catcher's mitt. This thing that the big kids call the anterior cingulate gyrus. This thing that functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy and compassion and love. The late Tulku Thondup and the late Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche insisted that the highest love is spontaneous and uncontrived. Those of us who over-rely on our prefrontal cortex and overstimulate our amygdala may strive to contrive a analog of love. But in the words of David Bowie, I keep coming up with love, but it's so slashed and torn. The highest love is the spontaneous forward-falling motion, propitiation of the perception and release that rely upon our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Because it's relying on these tissues, it's going to be more resilient. It's going to be more laid back, more resourceful. But wait, there's more. The more we train in this particular mindfulness and meditation, the more that our choices and utterances and deeds will flow with the effortless effort of love's centered spontaneity. And so we won't need a reason. We won't need a plan. We will find ourselves choosing and saying and doing things which may seem inconsequential today at this hour, but could have far-reaching effects, direct and indirect, overtly and subtly, immediately or eventually, actually or potentially. There is a saying, please let me know if you've heard it before: drop by drop, even the largest vase is eventually filled. Who knows what domino-like series, chain of events we could set in action simply by being an instrument of love and wisdom. I love the Beastie Boys, the late Beastie Boys, the one who died of cancer. Was an enthusiastic Buddhist. And one of his lesser-known raps, and I'm going to do a terrible paraphrase, To make world better, I'm going to plot and scheme. Well, he gets full marks for enthusiasm. But plotting and scheming is not yin, it's yang. Plotting and scheming is relying upon our prefrontal cortex and inadvertently stimulating our amygdala. Better to flow. To have a simple, effective, potent, consistent practice that helps us to flow. I don't know if you're as silly as me, but as a disabled child, I watched a lot of TV. And on Saturday afternoons, there would be something known in Los Angeles as Kung Fu Theater. And we saw the worst that China had to offer. But one of the consistent tropes one could not help but notice was the journeyman martial artist versus the master martial artist. Now, the novice martial artist was just scared shitless and did whatever they were told. The journeyman martial artist knew all the techniques and applied them with maximum effort and enthusiasm. But when this journeyman martial artist would fight a master martial artist who knew the exact same techniques, the master would apply them just as subtly and gently with a conservation of effort, looking as if he wasn't even paying attention, and yet deftly dodging the kicks and punches in the most effective way, applying the same techniques the journeyman knew, but not from an agenda, not from a set of memorized strategies. The master was not trying to recall a previous game plan. The master, he or she, would just flow in the present moment. Now, all of us are not kung fu experts. All of us are not characters in a Hong Kong opera. But we can learn the lesson that yin always triumphs over yang. If you have the good fortune to read the 81 poems of the Tao Te Ching, personally, I'm partial to the translation of presented by Dr. Rosemary Anderson, PhD. I think she did a fabulous job. But if you notice that, yin always prevails over yang. Yang is always destructive. Yang is always the wrong choice, regardless of how well-intentioned it is. You might say, dude, I'm more into Buddhism than Taoism. Well, yin and yang, well, just as a rose by any other name would still smell as sweet, yin and yang is still found in various metaphysical systems with different names. For instance, in some Buddhist writings, the tale is told that the Buddha had a very, very foolish and destructive cousin named Devadatta. Devadatta is the poster boy for yang. The Gautama, the Buddha, is the poster boy for yin. When we are traversing the path of being rigid, fearful, controlling, superstitious, elitist, crypto-competitive, and cruel, we are walking in the footsteps of Devadatta. When we are doing the opposite, when we're traversing the path of being flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind, we are walking in the footsteps of yin, walking in the footsteps of Gautama. It's more than a choice. It's the mechanisms that we rely upon. If we over-rely upon our prefrontal cortex, if we overstimulate our amygdala, that's not our fault. Here in late-stage capitalism, we are trained to do this from childhood on, with threat of violence, we're doing with threat of beating or haranguing, or worse. We are conditioned to be rigid, robot-like drones. The people in the 1800s who were responsible for crafting the American educational system we're not trying to create a generation of geniuses. They're trying to create generations of obedient workers and soldiers. That's heartbreaking, is it not? And this did not only occur in America. So if we have the courage to recognize our yang tendencies, to overuse our prefrontal cortex and overstimulate our amygdala, that's not an indictment on us. It is an indictment upon the forces that shaped us as children and reinforced that conditioning as adults. But there's good news. You now know there's more to our central nervous system than this bit and this bit. You now know about the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And you now know that it correlates with our inhalation and our exhalation. Here's something extra you might not have known before today. When we silently, mentally, and passively recite the demonstrative pronoun this during our inhalation, it makes it much easier for our brain to cooperate with our sympathetic nervous system. Similarly, when we silently, mentally, and passively recite the one-syllable verb ease during our exhalation, it makes it much, much easier for our brain to cooperate with our parasympathetic nervous system. Remember back in the late 80s, there was this fun song where the chorus was, "I have the power." You know I have the power. Through the use of monosyllabic words, uttered silently and mentally and gently, in coordination with our inhalation and our exhalation and our autonomic nervous system. You can not only traverse the Buddha's path, but you can master it. You could be an instrument of a love and wisdom whose magnitude defies comprehension. I would love to chant and meditate with you. So let's do that after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I've spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering each school of meditation so that you would not have to. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. I think it could be great fun to play with the latest iteration of the Spaciousness of Diamond Mind, composed many centuries ago by Prahe Vajra, translated recently by Yeshe Donden, adapted and amplified by this MOOC, right? That what sits before you. Please chant with me. Non-grasping is already the perfect offering beyond any need for practice. The consummation of all practices which is already present. Non-conceptual wisdom eliminates every obstruction. Contemplative equanimity is the perfect mantra. The path of Yang, the path of Devadatta says, if it's to be, it's up to me. I'm going to petition Dharmapalas to protect me from obstructions. I'm going to use mantras to right every wrong I see in the world before me. I'm going to chant till my voice is harsh. But the path of Gautama says, well, the consummation of all practices is simply found in the practice of non-conceptual wisdom. It's simply found by working with our autonomic nervous system in harmony with our breath. Those upon the path of Devadatta say, oh, I must practice Buddhist witchcraft. I'm going to set up a mental form in my head of what I want to happen, and then I'm going to feed it with offerings and bows and chants. Ooh, what magic I will do. And yet, the best offering is simply the practice of awareness and release. Oh, the purveyors of yang that would say, jump through these fiery hoops, empty your bank account, for I have special techniques that no one else has. Horse feathers. The essence of all techniques, the most potent distillation, is simply Ati Yoga, known by many names. Known in Pali as Sati Pasati, known in Sanskrit as Jnana, known in China as Shan, known eventually as Zen, known also as Mahasandhi or Sutra Mahamudra or Ati Yoga, known in Tibet as Dzogchen or Trek Cho. This ridiculously simple technique is not only is the best that you can do, it will empower your intellectual, interpersonal, and physical intuition, not with the dangers of scattered spontaneity, but with the sustainability of centered spontaneity. Using the technique I've already discussed in the opening lesson, let us practice mindfulness during our inhalation, vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly, simply by silently, mentally, and passively reciting the demonstrative pronoun this. During our exhalation, let us relax into mind's non-graspable nature, meditating in harmony with our exhalation as silently, mentally, and passively we recite the one-syllable verb, ease. Let us start by counting 12 rounds, assuming that a round is simply one inhalation followed by one exhalation. With each inhalation, we can advance the tip of our thumb, touching various creases on our fingers, counting to 12. As silently and mentally we recite this and ease in harmony with our inhalation and exhalation. You're welcome to follow along with me. Beginning with your index finger. With a similar counting pattern on our left hand, instead of counting rounds, we can count sets of rounds. First set of 12 rounds, second set of 12 rounds, and so forth. If you wish to meditate for 20 or 40 or 60 minutes, then most likely 12 sets of 12 rounds will get the job done. Fortunately, for the first collection, you can count by attaching the tip of your left index finger to the great knuckle of the base of your right index finger. For the second collection of 144 rounds, you can work with your middle finger and your middle knuckle. For the third collection of 144 rounds, you can work with your ring finger and the great knuckle of the base of your right ring finger, resting your hands in your lap the whole time. For the fourth collection of 144 rounds, you can touch the tip of your left pinky to the great knuckle of the base of your right pinky. If this is overwhelming, that's okay. Persist with it twice a day for a couple weeks, and you'll master it. just as working with your index finger and index knuckle invited the energy to the crown, working with your middle finger and middle knuckle invites the energy to the chest. Please chant with me. To honor spiritual teachers, practice generosity, and perform all manner of merit-making activities, becomes a form of ignorance when performed in the absence of equality and non-attachment. Let us not get stuck in the swamp of controlling tendencies, superstition, and fear. Let us treat all beings with respect. Let us be as generous as we can with all beings. Generous with our resources, generous with our smile, generous with our kind intention, generous with our loving, centered spontaneity. I'm now going to touch the tip of my left ring finger to the great knuckle at the base of my right ring finger. Bring these hands to rest in my lap. As I count approximately 144 rounds. Please chant with me, he said, and then reached for a beverage. The wisdom conveyed by this teaching gets obscured by active striving. When envisioned by conceptual grasping, the true condition cannot be realized. Our job is not to concentrate. Our job is not to analyze. Our job is to notice vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. Our job is to relax. Our job is to release. And to do all the above in harmony with our inhalation and our exhalation. If you have just tuned in to the final quarter of this evening's practice, welcome aboard. The easiest way to practice mindfulness during our inhalation is to silently, mentally, and passively recite the demonstrative pronoun this. The easiest way to practice the meditation of release during our exhalation is to silently, mentally, and passively recite the one-syllable verb is. Subtle finger positions or mudras can help us to work with our channel's wisdom drops. We can touch the tip of our left little finger to the back of our right little finger and slide it down until it comes to rest upon the great knuckle at the base of our right little finger. We can then place our hands in our lap. We could count 12 rounds on 4 fingers and 1 thumb, assuming that a round is just 1 inhalation followed by 1 exhalation. During each inhalation, we can advance the tip of our right thumb upon the creases of our 4 fingers, beginning with our index finger. That was one set of 12 rounds. On our left hand, we can count one set of 12 rounds, two sets of 12 rounds, three sets of 12 rounds, and so forth, for a total of 12 sets of 12 rounds. That's what the big kids call 144 rounds. Keeping track. Number one is great for our channel's wins and drops. Number two, if you struggle with dopamine management and have some form of neurodivergence, this can be very helpful. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 10.5 hours, I would very much like to return to lead tomorrow's early meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.